594 BC, the Archon of Athens, Solon, was tasked with refashioning the standard coinage of that city, for it was quickly developing into a center of trade, culture, and wealth. He deliberated for some time and considered the counsels of numerous wise men and committees, all the while being scrutinized by a newly established people who had just recently fled to Athens after the fall of Assyria, namely the Arameans. His decision on Athenian monetary reform, which was to benefit the indebted city-state, simply diluted the Attic mina, which had previously consisted of 73 drachmas, to the number of 100, thereby inaugurating at the Athenian temple the minting of coinage having less silver content to the value of the unit, not only to relieve the strains on debtors by lowering the worth of the standard coin, but, more prudently, to free Athenian trade from a system of weights under the control of a foreign merchant class, while giving all future transactions a local arrangement that did not extend beyond the Aegean Sea. Furthermore, trimming the drachma's silver valuation now made it incompatible with the shekel, the prime unit of exchange in Babylonia, Assyria, and Phoenicia, thereby loosening this common market's grip on Athens, which had become a de facto dependency of it. Although Solon retained the Phaedonian stater, comprised of 2 drachmas, with the drachma's division of 6 obols, Athens was forced to adjust her money to a weighting structure that was regionally standardized, redirecting her cultural and commercial interests westward again. The stress made upon reweighting indicates that such a reform was designed for, and perhaps only understood by those concerned with silver as a measure of weight. In other words, large-scale movements of bullion, the shipment, transactions, and conformity of which now having been compromised by these changes. These very same bullion agents had attempted such monetary intrigues in the Peloponnese, particularly in Sparta, during the time of Lycurgus, but had been put to the sword. However, at Athens, the reforms were applied peacefully and took hold quickly, with little contention, and lasted until Pericles centralized the coffers of the Delian League in 454 BC. The most significant outcome stemming from the monetary reforms of Solon was the separation of Athens from the financial hegemony of Babylonia and its proxy agencies in Lydia, Aegina, and Argos. Henceforth it was strictly forbidden to Athenian merchants to settle unfavorable trade balances with slaves, and almost profitless to do so with silver, either in coin or bullion. The banking houses and trapezitae would now have to serve Athenian interests while deriving their profits from local business, resulting in the greater circulation of currency within Athens, which facilitated such a rise in industry that she soon led all other city-states in output and specialization. The monetary system assumed after Solon, therefore, had a beneficial effect. The old noxious contracts and commercial snares disappeared, and loans of money took their place, founded on property and the prospective earnings of the debtor, which were in the main useful to all parties. Moreover, the moral attitude of the Athenian population took on a more noble character, while a vital sense of community spirit was aroused. The Athenians even called it Sysaktia, or the shaking off of burdens, but in reality this was merely the severing of the bonds of Babylonian internationalism and its economic hegemony. Meanwhile, Athens established herself as a minor competitive force to this financial power, as was later shown by the Persian efforts at encirclement, towards which their seizure and control of the Thracian mines in the year 512 BC constituted the first clear step. Even if the reforms of Solon were not so absolute as those of Lycurgus in Sparta, the Persian move in 512 BC by no means took the strength out of Athens and her allies, while securing ship timbers for the fleets they were planning and further silver supplies. Persia, wherein nested the international money power at that time, thought that she would be cutting off from Athens these commodities so essential to the promotion of her war industry. Yet she still continued to maintain herself free of this Babylonian financial web, which now sheltered behind Persia, and despite the enormous resources of this empire, was somehow able to defeat it at Marathon in 490 BC, Salamis in 480 BC, then decisively at Plataea and Mycale the following year. Prior to Solon's laws, the free men of Athens had become swamped in debt. The law in respect to this situation had been upheld by a corrupted nobility in favor of foreign banking privileges. No doubt it had been represented to them by the agents of silver bullion that this pressure of debt on the growing population would keep the Greeks docile and tied to the land, indicated by the prevalence of hundreds of mortgage tablets on the farms of Attica and slave sales receipts made out on clay ledgers. This condition, favoring the corrupted nobility of Greece and the international money power, ignored the needs of the manufacturing class in Athens, who was neither able to obtain sufficient supply of local free labor nor to obtain slaves fairly. Where credit institutions had long since existed, as in the Grecian ports, in a land of relatively simple folk, where the ways of money were no more understood than they are today, by loans of ledger credit page entry, money against collateral, demanding in repayment of silver coinage, the foreign money interest had made a fortune in Greece. By using the same standard of weight in its precious metal coinage, and calling in loans in unison, the money supply could then be shrunk to almost nothing, on which their agents abroad could send ships to buy crops or goods, or men, women, and children for a song. Athens herself had been despoiled of countless native sons, as she had become a major center in the Mediterranean slave trade, which so desperately needed bodies in the rebuilding of the Near East. The city was quickly urbanizing, and from the outset, one thing was clear. It had become necessary for many to travel there, and to work in some menial industry. For young men, that often meant going down into the silver mines of Laurion, where, for a scab's wage, they could join the gangs of thralls clawing their way into the bedrock until further sources of slave labor could be found. The laws of the Archon Solon, by making no provision of employment for the freed debt slaves, nor providing any redistribution of the land, gave the Athenian manufacturer that labor which he most needed. The Solonian ordinance offering Athenian citizenship to any free man from the countryside who came to Athens to take up a trade further improved the labor market. Moreover, these monetary reforms, by reducing the exports of coin and bullion, gave Athenian manufacturers the fair market capital that they required to develop the first sophisticated Western society. It can be said, then, that Solon's laws were an early manifestation of the Greco-European principle, and the rejection, compulsory or otherwise, by all levels of society, of the Babylonian financial system. Meanwhile, an emerging, liberal, Athenian-moneyed class remained silent for the time being, seeing which way the wind lay, only to grab the reins to the system a century and a half later, plunging the entire Greek world into a devastating civil war, while handing over the sovereignty of its city-states to those very same agents of international finance.